everything. All right.
Let's be honest. The best part about the prayer study episodes is us carrying on a conversation, and then me in the middle of the conversation just hitting the record button.
So they hear like the last part of it.
Yeah.
We can do that with a joke next time.
Perfect intro.
Where they hear just the punchline of the joke and they wonder, what was the joke? You ever had that happen?
That reminds me of one where it was in a book and it was a situation like that where it was just the end of the joke and it was like,
what is the joke
on earth?
How does that?
What?
How did you get here?
Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, that may have actually been in something that I wrote where I was like,
I could see you doing that.
Funny. And then
I could see you doing
that. And then somebody asked me, what is the joke that goes with this? And I was like, there's not one. I just
idea. Just made up a punchline.
I was just like, hey, this is an interesting situation. Have it.
Yeah, there you go. Make up your own joke to go along with this.
Yeah.
All right. So last time that we were talking about topics, we were talking about getting to know God better, praying for a better knowledge of God.
Yeah. And this time we are kind of doing a bit of a follow-up to that and talking about
how that's gonna
how that affects our lives. I was about to say what it was, and then my mind was just like, nope, it's gone now.
Yeah.
So,
because you have too many holes in your head.
Everyone has holes in their head. I think it may be because mine are kind of stopped up.
You'd think that'd help keep it inside better.
Well, no, because it actually just makes your head heavy and feel like you're sick and makes your brain die a little bit inside.
Oh, well.
Okay, so your knowledge of God is going to affect life, prayer.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much all of it. And let's...
how you feel toward him. I mean, let's start with like the most basic of things.
Does he exist?
Well, not that basic. I mean,
you said the most basic of things. Does he exist?
The most basic of things in our relationship.
Most is a superlative.
Okay. Most basic in our relationship with him, which you can't have if he didn't exist. So there.
But it's still the foundation of our relationship with him is that we believe he does exist.
Yes. But I'm talking about the relationship based on believing he exists. Believing who exists. Believing who is he that we believe in.
Okay.
That's the idea. I mean, believing there is, quote, a higher power is not the same thing as believing in God. Yes, you're right. But what I want to talk about is who is God to you? When I say, we should pray to God, we should worship God, we should love God, whatever. When I mention God, what comes into your mind?
You're asking me specifically or the people?
Them too, but I mean,
okay.
What do you think of when you think of your relationship with God and who he is to you? I mean, do you think of him as your father, as your king, as your master or Lord, as your friend, as, a big old Santa Claus in the sky who will give you stuff if you ask for it? As
definitely that one.
The old Zeus with the lightning bolt ready to strike you dead? The all-seeing eye is watching you. Be careful what you do. But how you envision God and how you relate to him, that makes a big difference.
It does. Because if you believe that God is the Zeus, the all-seeing eye that's just going to watch you and keeps a pinpoint on every single thing you do, then you're going to be terrified constantly that something you do is going to get you on God's bad side and make him hate you for eternity.
Strike you dead.
Yeah. And you are going to have a terrible life, most likely.
Or eventually, when you do something bad and he doesn't strike you dead, you're going to go, huh, guess he's not real. I can just do whatever I want. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people who had this vision of God where
He was
they
terrible.
thought, they thought if I just do even the slightest thing, he's going to destroy me. And then
They messed up, and he
he
didn't.
didn't. And so
Well,
they're like, I can
he
just
must
do
not be
whatever.
real.
And so they lose their faith in God because their faith was built on a caricature
Mm-hmm.
of God instead of who God really is. And
Now, is it true that you can make God upset at you to the point that he would just get incredibly angry with you? Look at some of the prayers that Moses has been giving on behalf of the Israelites. He has been killing people because they have been rejecting him.
Look at
But
Ananias and
that's the key,
Sapphira.
they're rejecting him.
Yeah.
You may correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the way I always like to say it is that God doesn't reject us, we reject him. And if we reject him often enough, long enough, then it's going to get to the point where he's going to be like, all right, fine, you can be like that. I've had enough of you.
That's what you want. That's kind of the Romans 1 picture where, God he gave up on them. He's like, okay, they have rejected me. They've done everything so far against me.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw somebody posted something about that the other day. And they were like, oh, yeah, now we're seeing what it's like when God turns his back on us. And I'm like, you hadn't seen that yet.
Yeah.
As much turmoil and difficulties as we've been having the last couple of months and stuff here in this year, if you think that's God turning his back on you, you don't have a clue.
Crack open a Bible.
Because when God turns his back on us, we'll know it.
Oh, yeah.
It won't be a maybe God's doing. No, we would know. We would be suffering much.
Forget
worse.
about a country. There wouldn't be the landmass left.
Well, not necessarily. He may cleanse the land.
What about on the other side of things, though? We've talked about, if you see God as this terrible thing, then
terrible's an interesting word.
It is.
Think about. Not well. That is terrible because it's paper.
Yeah.
No, that's an interesting one. Okay. Think about
how long is this rabbit
terror.
last?
It's just gonna be a few seconds. Terror.
Okay.
And horror. Both of those words are scary things.
Okay.
Terror and horror. Then you have with horror, you have horror, horrible, and horrific.
Okay.
And those are all awful things.
Mm-hmm.
With terror, you have terror, and then you have terrible, and then you have terrific.
Yeah.
But we use terrific to mean something's wonderful. How did that happen?
Because the English language exists. Now, continuing on.
God is terrific.
He is.
The Bible also says he is terrible.
So, if you see God as more of the
vengeful, spiteful, mean, angry.
We were swapping sides.
We're swapping.
Yes. So if you see him as the opposite of that,
which is
see him as
gentle, kind, loving,
kind,
wouldn't hurt a fly.
Yeah, all that.
Human beings are
then, which I feel like a lot of people see him as, because we have.
I think
why did God let this happen?
Oh, God would never send somebody to hell to suffer forever.
God is all love. He's not going to let terrible things happen to me or anybody else. It's just not who he is. Open a Bible, please.
Yeah.
Really.
And even God even lets the bad things happen sometimes to the people he loves.
Yes. Read the book of Job.
Yeah. Well,
Job was God's it might not say it exactly like this, but Job was God's, I believe, greatest servant during that time.
Yeah, he was the one that he's like, look at my servant Job. He's a man.
On the entire earth, God picks one person, and it's Job. That's how important Job is. That's how good of a person he is. That on the entire earth, Satan comes up and God's like,
What about Job? He's my guy.
He's the person.
He's my man. He's loyal.
And
I
then
count
look
on him.
at all of the terrible things that God lets Job endure. His entire family dies. All of his riches are down the drain in a matter of hours. All he has left is his wife. And
his nagging wife that tells him to just curse God and die.
And 3 friends that think he is the worst person on the planet for all this stuff having happened to him.
Well, obviously he's a bad dude, or bad things wouldn't happen.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
God is not.
He's not going to always protect us from every bad thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not going to happen.
But at the same time, he is not necessarily the direct cause of every bad thing in the world. He's not the Zeus standing up there ready to just smite everybody.
And I think about that with this thing with the virus and everything. Did God send the virus? Well, okay. Did God create viruses? Yes. Did God specifically send this virus to punish certain people this year? Not necessarily. Not really.
I mean, is it possible?
I mean, could he? Yes, he could.
He's God. He can do whatever.
He certainly sent diseases on the Egyptians and things. So, I mean, he can do that. Did he with this one? Well, there's certainly, no way that we would know outside. In the Bible, when there was a prophecy, you knew this is God doing this because the prophecy came and it said so. But, does that mean that he doesn't expect us to learn from this situation, though? He wants us to learn from it. But it doesn't mean that he's trying to punish us or, it could be, he may have allowed it so that it would wake us up.
Yeah.
Just like he allowed the things in Job's life, like he allowed things in Joseph's life, he allowed things in Jesus' life.
Yeah.
To teach him obedience.
Yep.
Which you wouldn't think Jesus would have had to have learned, but he did still have to learn that. But there's a lot of things about which side of that we are looking at God from.
And there are a couple other things before we close out that I want us to be able to see. First of all, we've only had time to deal with one kind of dual aspect of God here. God is incredibly complex, and there are nigh unto infinite other sides of him that we could have dealt with. So don't think just because you watch this video, okay, I know those 2 sides of God, we're good, I can go pray and it'll all be fine now. It's not the way it works. Take a lot of time, do your own study into God's character and his will and what he wants you to do and all of that. The other thing that I want us to see is that our experiences in this life can greatly change the way we view God, for better or for worse. If you grew up in a family where your dad was amazing, seemed like he had no problems whatsoever, no faults at all, took care of the family really well,
like Xander did.
For a split second, I was like, I got that reversed, and I was like, I'm the dad that did all that? Huh? No.
Well, maybe one day. Maybe you'll be a better dad than I was.
If you grew up in a family like that where you had the perfect
You loved your father, and everything about it was good.
Then when you read the Bible and you see the verses that say God is our Father, then you're going to have a picture of your dad, and you're going to be, okay,
yeah, you compare God to that.
God's dad. He's perfect. He takes care of me. He punishes me when he has to, but he's my dad, and I love him.
He's never mean. He never neglects me. He never yells at me when I don't deserve it. Any of those things. He's just wonderful.
Whereas if instead of that, you grew up in a family where dad was drunk, on drugs, couldn't hold down a job, maybe just
was abusive, absent,
and then you read God is our Father, and that picture comes to mind.
Yeah.
Then you get it stuck in your head that God is
very
this
distorted. You can't trust him,
distrustful, wishy-washy, terrible picture of who God is.
Yeah.
And so we need to be careful, in part, while we study, that the pictures that we pull from words in the Bible are not our pictures.
Yeah.
They're the pictures that God wants us to get from that.
Yeah. When we picture him as a father, we have to recognize he is a father as a father should be, not a father as our fathers are or were. He is the ideal father. He is. I mean, same thing with, if we think of him as a king, there are some horrible kings in history.
Oh, yeah.
He is the ideal king.
He's the perfect
He's the perfect king. He is. There have been corrupt judges. He is our judge, but he is the ideal judge. He's always fair, always right, never makes a wrong decision in his judging. As a master, slavery is a horrible thing for us to even think of. We don't like to think about slavery, and the horrible, atrocious things that masters did to their slaves throughout history. When there was wherever there was slavery, and so we don't like to think about it. We have trouble even imagining that there could be such a thing as a good master. And yet God shows what a good master, servant, or slave relationship should have been like, even though it rarely, if ever, was even anywhere near that in life anywhere in the world at any time in the past, or for that matter present, as there are still slaves in places in the world.
All right. So, I've tossed in my 2 cents. You threw in a couple of dimes and a quarter.
Wow, I'm glad mine was so valuable because I thought it was 2 bits.
I was going more for length rather than value.
Oh, so
quantity,
seconds,
not quality.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. Hope that this was helpful to you. Helps maybe clear up a few of your misconceptions.
And examine who you think God is.
And examine it against the Bible.
And compare. Okay, when I think that, what am I thinking? What am I picturing? I know we can't see God; He doesn't have a physical form, but what am I comparing Him to? It's an important thing for us to do if we really want to understand Him better.
So hope that we will see you back here again tomorrow. And until then, keep praying, keep examining everything, I guess.
And, keep growing in that relationship with God.
Yeah.
Talk to Him, let Him talk to you through His Word, and continue to grow that dialogue and grow that relationship as a result of it. Getting to know each other better. Well, I don't guess He could get to know you any better.
No. Okay. See you.
Bye.